Right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a webcast and understanding for what is international recognition, IRP. So I'm joined with colleagues from the MHRA. So just to introduce myself to those who may not know me, my name is Julian Beach. I'm the Interim Executive Director for Healthcare Quality and Access. So I'm chairing this webinar today. With me are Shirley Hopper, Deputy Director for Innovative Medicines, Andrea Johnson, Deputy Director for Authorization Lifecycle, Alison Shaw, Head of Oncology, Hematology and Thrombotic Diseases within our Safety and Surveillance Group, Leonard Booth, Partnership Colleague, Ian Jackson, Expert GMP Assessor, and Jasvinder Singh, Head of Team for New Active Substances within Healthcare Quality and Access. So, as I say, really welcome you all this morning. So there will be a structure for the morning where we're going to be going through the international context, the features of recognition A and B, the PV considerations, the nuts and bolts of how we apply for an MA via an IRP, the product life cycle, variations in recognition, and a Q&A session. So we intend this to last an hour this morning. What I really wanted just to mention to you is the benefits we see of international recognition and where it fits. So it is an opportunity for us to place medicines to market faster within the UK, but it also balances our need to understand how we can support industry and our patients with innovation. Because of the recognition framework, we do have then increased capacity so we can respond more quickly. We are using it to strengthen our international partnerships and how we work internationally with our regulatory peers with assessments, but we also want to maintain our sovereign powers and be a sovereign regulator. So that is a very clear aim of what we're looking to do. All of which means we want to enhance the attractiveness of the UK for creating an environment where the sector is able to develop and launch new medicinal products, and obviously for the benefit of public health. What we also want to do within the agency is build on where we have been, acknowledging the last few years. We also want to make sure that we are delivering predictability and reliability above everything else. So of all the feedback that I've heard in various conversations that have been with industry, with different stakeholders, what we really want to be looking at from an agency perspective is it to ensure that we deliver on our promises. So we are looking with the IRP to be taking the best parts of how we run the ECDRP process currently, which finishes at the end of the year, and other recognition procedures globally, and build that into how we can encourage applications here. The purpose of the webinar really is to follow the guidance that we issued in August. Also, we want to provide you with more information and an opportunity to ask question and answers on specific topics. And we will be looking at how can we clarify any questions which remain at the end of this. So this is part of our ongoing aim to be absolutely open with what we're doing, but remembering that above everything else, we want to be reliable and we want to be making sure that we deliver on what we do. Okay. So if I hand over to Leo Booth, who can explain the background, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Julian, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Leonard Bose. Next slide, please. So to start with, it's useful to frame this work here from the international perspective. As you can see on this slide, this is an overview of approval models worldwide. I would like to draw your attention to the right side of the graph, namely to reliance and recognition frameworks from around the world. As evident from the long list of countries you can see on the right side, we're clearly not the first ones to introduce reliance and recognition. So we have been reaching out to our international partners. We had a look at the guidance published by these other regulators, and that has certainly also very much informed our own approach to reliance and recognition. So what we are here proposing for international recognition at MHRA is aligned with what other regulators are doing. Next slide, please. So of course, for the last several years, we've also made experiences with using reliance and recognition because we had ECDRP in place. That was introduced in early January 2021, but it was always intended to be temporary. It has allowed the MHRA to rely on an EC decision, but as you know, the ECDRP will come to an end later this year, and from the 1st of January next year, a new international recognition framework will be in place. In terms of the international partners that we've taken on board here, it's clear that our existing international partnerships, such as in particular those formed with the Access Consortium, also with Project Orbis, have very much influenced that particular choice. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm sure you've all seen the guidance that we published a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure you're also familiar with the list of reference regulators on the right side. Maybe just one sentence to mention for this particular slide here. You can see in the last row of the table, the EU is mentioned. It's worth noting that under the umbrella of international recognition, there are first of all the centralized approvals to EMA, but of course also approvals through the member state competent authorities. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, we have sought input from our international partners to create our own international recognition framework. Singapore have been using reliance recognition for several decades at this point. So we've certainly been analyzing their guidance and what they're doing in the space. We've also been analyzing what our Swiss colleagues are doing with the Article 13 TPA, which is similar to a reliance recognition framework. And last but not least, we've also been reaching out to our Australian colleagues at TGA. They've got this so-called core report-based process, which again is similar to reliance and recognition. So we have been analyzing these different guidance documents from other regulators and what they are doing in the area of reliance and recognition. So what we're proposing here for international recognition at MHRA is very much aligned with what other regulators are already doing in this space. Next slide, please. And over to Shirley. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo, and good morning, everybody. So I'm going to provide some of the key features of IRP. Next slide, please. So IRP is offered alongside the MHRA's national licensing routes. So this is the National Day 150, Day 210, Project Orbis, and the Access Pathways, and these are unchanged, therefore still available. IRP is open to applicants who have received an authorization from one of the reference regulators that Leo has just summarized. It has to be the same medicinal product. There has to be a full standalone review by the reference regulator. So we cannot do a recognition on a prior reliance or recognition procedure. And the reference regulator authorization for initial application needs to have been within the last 10 years. So we will conduct a targeted assessment of the dossier based on the reference regulator assessment reports. And these should be in English, and apart from assessor names, should be unredacted. IRP will cover the product life cycle, and there'll be more about this later. And also the MRDC reliance procedure that is currently running will be incorporated under the umbrella of IRP. But MRDC RP submissions received before the 1st of January 2024 will be processed under the existing practices. So this slide summarizes the product types covered by IRP. So these will include new chemical, biological entities, new fixed combination products, generics, and that includes hybrid applications. For biologicals, that will include ATMPs, cell and gene therapies, vaccines, and biosimilars are also in scope. So not included at this time are traditional herbal and homeopathic product applications, and also bibliographic applications that rely on well-established use in the UK. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to cover Recognition A and Recognition B. Now this only applies for initial marketing authorization applications. And we have described two different timetables and fees for Recognition A and Recognition B. Recognition A is quite similar to the existing ECDRP 67-day timetable. It's 60 calendar days with no clock stop. Recognition B is 110 calendar days, and what that allows for, if needed, is a clock stop at 70 days, and that clock stop is for a maximum of 60 days. So for Recognition A, if issues cannot be resolved within 60 days, and we expect this to be rare, then the timetable may revert to a Recognition B timetable. For Recognition B, the timetable does allow for us to consult with our expert committees, including the Commission on Human Medicines, before day 70, if that is required. And we will soon be publishing submission dates for new active substance applications to align with CHM dates in due course, because for the new active substances under Recognition B, they are likely to require CHM. For Recognition B, if there are outstanding major objections at day 110, then the timetable would need to revert to the national standard timetable. So these timetables do compare favourably with our national assessment timetables, which are currently day 150 or day 210 timetables. And there will be a pre-submission eligibility form to determine the suitability of an initial MA application for Recognition A or B. And the applicant should complete this form at least 6 weeks before submission. So it can be done earlier than 6 weeks. In a few cases, the MHRA will need to triage to determine if A or B, and we'll talk a bit more about the eligibility form later. So applications that are unsuitable for A or B can be submitted via the national route if MHRA requirements are met. We think this will be a rare occurrence, and of course, if this does arise, we would be able to expedite the pre-submission meeting phase to allow a timely submission. So overall, these timetables and fees do reflect the likely MHRA resource that is required. And as Julian has already said, our aim is to provide predictable timelines for applicants. And as we gain experience, we may consider amending the Recognition B timelines or eligibility form criteria. Next slide, please. So Recognition A, to be eligible, the reference regulator approval must be within 2 years, and the manufacturing process needs to be the same as that approved by the reference regulator. There needs to be evidence of compliance with GMP at submission, and none of the Recognition B criteria, which I will cover in the next slide, should be met. Next slide, please. So for Recognition B, the reference regulator approval must have been granted within the previous 10 years. our guidance outlines in detail the criteria for Recognition B, and of course these will also be reflected in the questions on the eligibility form. But I'm just summarising the main criteria here. So, for example, if the international equivalent of a conditional or exceptional circumstances MA has been granted, and or this is sought in a UK or GB, then Recognition B would apply. Recognition B will also apply if compared to the assessment done of Module 3 by the reference regulator, there are additional manufacturing sites, substantial changes in the process, or a different container closure system, shelf life, or storage conditions. The application would also be Recognition B if at least one manufacturing site has not yet been GMP certified. Also, Recognition B applies for certain product types, for example, ATMPs, orphan products, and over-the-counter. And there are also some risk management plan considerations that will be covered later. So I'll now hand over to Alison Shaw to cover some of the pharmacovigilance aspects.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. So next slide, please. So with regards to the risk management plan, all new applications for a marketing authorization must include a risk management plan. And in line with our existing guidance, this must follow the EU RMP template. Alternatively, in the case that there is an RMP approved in the EU, where appropriate, there is also the option to use the GB UK specific RMP annex along with the approved EU RMP. There's specific guidance on when this is appropriate, which is in place currently and is on our website. So there are certain circumstances which will route applications through Recognition B specifically in regards to the risk management plan. So these are in the case that the reference regulator has not assessed the RMP that is proposed for the application to MHRA, or if it is in a different format to our requirements. Secondly, if there are UK-specific risk management activities proposed, or thirdly, if the reference regulator has mandated one or more post-authorization safety studies. Next slide, please. So with regard to the general requirements for pharmacovigilance, the existing UK requirements for submission of pharmacovigilance data, such as ICSRs and periodic safety update reports, continue to apply. There will be no substantive changes to our existing pharmacovigilance guidance with the introduction of the IRP. The marketing authorization holder has a responsibility to keep their product license up to date. There is the obligation to notify MHRA as soon as reasonably practical of any information that might influence the evaluation of benefits and risks of an authorized product. Safety variations can be submitted through IRP. However, it should be borne in mind that the IRP is not a substitute for the MAH's obligations to submit pharmacovigilance data and information to the MHRA. Where there is new information that might impact evaluation of benefits and risks of a product, likely to impact clinical management of patients or may require proactive communication, then in those cases there should be no delay in submitting this information to the MHRA.
We appear to have lost Alison.
Oh, am I back?
You are back, Andrea, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I seem to have an internet connection, so hopefully I'll get through this as quickly as possible. So to start off with, you need to obtain your product license number, and that's our normal procedures. So if you're not registered with us, you need to register with us to get a 5-digit code and then obtain the PL number itself. Once you've done that, then you need to complete forms to determine what type of recognition procedure you are eligible to apply for. And as we've already indicated, this requires you to complete this form, the eligibility form, 6 weeks before you are about to put your application in. To do that, you will save your eligibility form ready for submission to the MHRA. The form itself will tell you whether your application is a route A or route B, or whether it requires triage. And once you've got that, you'll know which route that you need to follow. So if it is a recognition A or B, then you need to submit the form along with your marketing authorization application via the MHRA submissions platform using the Human Medicines tab. It's very important that you only submit international recognition via this route and do not use any other routes. If it requires triage, then you need to submit the form 6 weeks in advance of your full submission date via the MHRA recognition mailbox, which we gave you in the guidance, and then await the determination from the MHRA as to the appropriate type of procedure. Once you've received that, you can go ahead and submit your MAA and include the eligibility form and the MHRA decision and submit that via the MHRA submissions. For new active substances, we require you to give us 6 weeks notice. So even if it comes up with being a recognition A or B, you will still need to submit that to the MHRA recognition mailbox. There obviously won't be any triage for that. And then you can proceed to submit it, including the form in your MAA in 6 weeks' time. And finally, if is a new active substance and it requires triage, then in a similar way to I've described above, you need to submit the form 6 weeks in advance to the mailbox, await our determination, and then go through the procedure as discussed. The eligibility form at the moment, we're developing it, it's being built. We intend to have this available towards the end of October, and we will be seeking some companies to test this, but further information on that will come out later. So moving on to product lifecycle and recognition. Applications submitted from IRP will follow the existing timeframes that we use for these types of application. There's no recognition or A or B for variations. The types of application that you can apply for are type 1B and type 2 variations, and renewals, which can include the annual renewal with conditional marketing authorizations and the annual reassessment for exceptional circumstances. All other types of post-market application are national only. We recommend that you use the same reference regulator throughout the product life cycle. However, if you do want to use more than one reference regulator, you can do this if it's justified. Because there's no A or B, you don't have to fill in any eligibility form. So you will submit your application using the usual application forms and the content that is required for ECTD, and including the cover letter that this is a recognition procedure and who the reference regulator is. And finally, just picking up some points on ECDD requirements and fees. We will be producing some guidance on both of these, and that will be coming out shortly. But the standard is that ECTD must follow the EU format, and that includes the UK specific module 1. You must include certain information in the cover letter, and we've indicated what that is in the guidance. Generally speaking, if you want some additional information, it will either be included in the cover letter or in module 1 additional folder. And our guidance will include information on naming conventions that you should that are best practice for subfolders and also for files, and as I've indicated, that will come out shortly. Fees, we will be following the existing Reliance fee routes, and we will be providing data on that and updating our existing fees page in due course. We will keep this under review during the initial phases of implementation, and we will align with any modification of that with our agency standard review fee cycle. And I'm going to hand over into our Q&A session.
Really want to thank everybody for your time this morning. So if there are any other thoughts from my co-presenters, then please say. But what I really want to say is that we will be sharing further information on this through gov.uk and other channels. So the recording of this webinar will be published within 2 to 3 weeks on gov.uk, and we will be able to be contacted when this is live. That you will be able to contact when this is live. And then we are also planning to run further webinars with additional capacity, so that we have had quite a large number of people join this morning, which thank you very much again for your time. And we will be looking to have that in November with more details to follow. So with that, I wish everybody a good rest of the day, and thank you very much again to all for your time.